Welcome to my first instructional video on student assessment. We call this series of videos as Assessment 101. For today, we will discuss the basic concepts and try to understand and unpack some terms related to assessment. I will try to explain and clarify and differentiate the meaning of the terms assessment, measurement, and evaluation. After listening to this instructional video, I hope you are able to differentiate the concepts of assessment, measurement, and evaluation, and explain the functional relationships of assessment, measurement, and evaluation. We all know that the most important task of schooling should be deciding what students should learn and determining what students have learned. It is important to consider the appropriateness of what we expect students to know before we begin the assessment process. This is the focus of this video. This is the first of the series of video of an Assessment 101, and this is your learning partner, Dr. Richard Gonzalez. But before we proceed, please subscribe to my channel, Doccha's Thoughts and Insight, and please like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more discussion on all about Assessment 101. So, most teachers and even educators have the perception that the concept of measurement, assessment, and evaluation mean almost the same idea. They think that all these three concepts can be used interchangeably, and the processes involved are essentially the same. This notion, therefore, needs to be clarified before any teacher can start his or her activities particularly in conducting student learning assessment. Student learning takes in many forms depending on what curricular program and activities are presented. Each curricular program specifies what is to be learned and achieved by students who undergo such program. Setting curricular program and corresponding learning intents requires the teachers not only to lay down this how this can be achieved and also how the achievement can be determined. The process of teaching and learning adheres to a cycle of planning of learning intents, identifying strategies to implement it, and determining how intents were achieved. Determining how achievement of learning intents is one of the greatest challenges that teachers need to face, particularly during these pandemic times wherein we go into online classes. They have done a good job in planning a curricular program and presenting it to students, but failed to determine how much have been achieved. In such scenario, teaching and learning process was not completed. Teaching and learning process can only be fulfilled after the determining how the intents were achieved using various procedures of data gathering and utilizing tools to measure them. So, let me first define the terms assessment, measurement, and evaluation. So, what is assessment? While one can find many definitions of assessment, generally speaking, assessment is the systematic collection of information about students and educational programs. It is simply defined as the systematic process of documenting and using empirical data on students' knowledge, skills, attitudes, and beliefs. By taking the assessment, teachers try to improve student learning. Assessment can be considered the systematic collection, review, and use of information about educational programs and services undertaken for the purpose of quality improvement, planning, and decision making. Assessment in general term that includes the full range of procedure used to gain information about student learning and the formation of value judgment concerning learning process. Examples of assessment procedures are observation, quizzes, rating of performance or projects, and other paper and pencil tests. So, simply, assessment answers the question how well the individual performed. Assessment respond directly to the concerns, okay, about better learning and more effective teaching. Definitely, there is a considerable evidence, or there is considerable evidences showing that assessment impacts students' learning and teaching effectiveness. More than anything else, assessment tools tell students what is important. Students will learn what and how teachers guide them to learn better through assessment. Assessment is more than grades. To many teachers, the term assessment simply means the process by which they assign grades to students. But assessment is much more than this. What about measurement? Measurement is another term that is closely associated with assessment. Measurement refers to the quantification of results obtained by using measurement tools or instruments. Measurement is the process of finding a number that shows the amount of something. To measure something, for example, is to give a number to some property of the thing or behavior. Measuring something puts the amount of the thing into numbers. Measurement can be written using many different units. Now, psychologist Stanley Stevens in 1946 developed the four common scales of measurement, and these are nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio. Each scale of measurement has properties that determine how to properly analyze the data. And in his famous article, Stevens argued that all measurement is conducted using four measurement levels. The four measurement levels are nominal, ordinal, and interval, as well as ratio. Nominal scale is used for naming variables in no particular order. For example, eye color, name of your school, okay, the number of your house, okay. And then ordinal scale is used for variables in rank order, but the difference between is not determined. For example, number one happy, number two neutral, number three unhappy, and number four very sad. Interval, on the other hand, is used for numerical variables known with equal intervals of the same distance. A very good example of this is time. Okay, and lastly, ratio is used for variables on a scale that have measurable intervals. For example, weight. Measurement is the process of assigning number to the results of a test and other assessments according to specific rules. It is the process of obtaining numerical description of the degree to which a student possesses a particular characteristic. In other words, okay, measurement answers the question how much. Next, what is evaluation? Evaluation is the process of making judgment about the levels of students' understanding or skills based on assessment. It is the systematic determination of subjects' merit, worth, significance using criteria governed by sets of standards. The primary purpose of evaluation, in addition to gaining insight prior or existing initiative, is to enable reflection and assist in the identification of future change in learning and teaching. In evaluation, I would like you to remember the words value, merit, worth, significance, and standards. Evaluation is the process of determining the worth of an activity, performance, or output, such as projects, test results, etc. In other words, evaluation answers the question, how worthy? Here, here is a diagram that shows the relationship of assessment, measurement, and evaluation. From the learning perspective, learning and teaching are mutual because teaching is done for the purpose of learning. And then teaching is done in the classroom or online, or when I mean when teaching is done in the classroom or online, whatever the teacher teaches and whatever the student learn, the lesson plans and the syllabus are based on teacher's assessment of learning. Learning and assessment are mutual because learning is something that can be measured because teaching has certain objectives. And in order to find out if the objectives of teaching are achieved or not, it can be known only through assessment. From the perspective of teaching, teaching and learning are mutual because whatever the teacher teaches, they are not something random or based on whims of the teacher. What is being taught in the class or in online class is based on teacher's assessment of learning, which come in the form of feedback as well as curriculum and syllabus. Teaching and assessment are mutual because teaching cannot be done randomly. It has to have objectives. And only through the assessment of learning, the objectives of learning can be identified. In other words, assessment is needed to design and plan a lesson for learning and to prepare and design syllabus and curriculum. Lastly, from the perspective of assessment, assessment and learning are also mutual because without assessment, learning cannot happen. The assessment can tell what the child learned, what they cannot learn, and as such, it is learning that decide what is being included in the curriculum. Assessment and teaching are also mutual because without assessment, the teacher will not know what was taught, how much students comprehend, and if the methodology of teaching is helpful for the student or not. We cannot part learning, teaching, and assessment at all. They have to form a cycle for the learning process to be completed, and that without each other, it will not be complete. Without the teacher, there cannot be learning, and without learning, we cannot assess. Since teaching has certain objectives, if the teaching is successful, learning happen or not can be known, and can only be known through assessment. And if objectives of the teachings are successful, we can only call it learning. So assessment is an integrated process for determining the nature and extent of student learning and development. This process will be most effective when the following principles are taken into consideration. Okay, and these are the principles and purposes of assessment. Okay, first, we need to clearly define, clearly specifying what is assessed or what is to be assessed as the priority in the assessment process. An assessment procedure should be selected because of its relevance to the characteristics or performance to be measured. Comprehensive assessment requires a variety of procedures. Proper use of assessment procedures requires assessment of their limitation. Assessment is a means, not to an end, not an end in itself. Overall, the purpose of an assessment is to collect information about students' performance in school. The three general purposes of assessment are instructional planning, evaluating student progress, and reporting to students, parents, and other teachers and administrators. So please note that assessment information should be free from bias, meaning always be objective and avoid subjectivity. It should be fair and consistent, that is valid and reliable for the purpose of suggesting developmentally appropriate activity to achieve productive mastery-oriented growth. Evaluation should be based on established criteria. Please note that it is the evaluator who puts value labels on the different level of criteria of performance. When grades are used, put students into categories, for example, pass-fail, which have valued consequences and hence evaluation. When a teacher fails a student, that is evaluation. When a principal fires a teacher because of student performance, that is evaluation. When we make decision based on value judgment, that is evaluation. A cautionary note is that assessment and evaluation are related, but are not the same. Evaluation is the process of determining the value or quality of a response, product, or performance that is assessed to make judgment. Assessment and evaluation are related, but they are not the same. You may be wondering if all assessment is evaluation. Does that not have or doesn't have to be the situation? If the assessment levels are constructed to describe levels of achievement students will have to develop as they progress to a master of a topic or skill, then there need to be no value placed on student performance. No need to downgrade or evaluate student performance poorly when it is below the top level of student performance would be assessed and described by its level to decide where learning and instruction should start and what kinds of learning activities would be best to move closer toward mastery. No value is attached, only decision based on student performance at his or her current developmental level. Good assessment levels are guides that describe how students progress and can be used to guide and anticipate what student might do by assessing their present and understanding performance and making instructional and learning decisions. As I have said, good assessment levels are guides that describe how students progress. I would like to end this video with this key takeaway. Assessment answers the question how well the student performed. Measurement answers the question how much. And evaluation answers the question how worthy. So these are the basic concepts that we need to understand initially. So please watch for my next video wherein we'll be having more conversation about student assessment. My next video will be focused on the types of assessment. So again, if you are new in this channel, please don't forget to click subscribe and bell button so that you will get notification on the next videos. See you again. This is Richard Gonzalez, your partner in understanding all about assessment. Thank you very much.